So right out of the box, this guitar is intonated very, very well. It is double boxed. New Firefly. All right. Here it goes. It's red. Let's take the rubber band off. Warning, keep away from young children. Do we have an opening here? We do. Okay. Here it is. In living color. Get over here by the light. Beautiful. I mean, wow. I didn't expect there to be any grain. But there is. And from this angle, you can really see the scarf joint. Made in China, at least you're honest. There we go. I see the action here is a little high for me. So first thing I'll do is I'm going to take off the truss rod cover and tighten the rod. Okay, I've turned these 10 half turns and moved the strings off to the side, the inner strings, and took the truss rod cover off, and this is quite loose. And I'm glad. I'm really glad about that. Okay, so I do count these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I did that with these as well. Now, why do I do that? It's just faster. If you remember 10 loose, 10 tight, you're going to get your strings pretty much in the neighborhood. Now, did not put the truss rod cover back on yet because I want to play it and see how this neck angle feels. I move these down 5 turns. Now this is already as far down as it's going to go. So 5. This was up a little higher than from the factory, that means, and that's okay. Okay, about a turn and a half. And I do, 1/8 turns, quarter turns, 3/8, half, 5/8, 3/4, the fractions. I'm gonna raise up the stop bar too. I gotta loosen the strings to do that. Not a lot, because I don't want these to fall off. Just give them some slack. You may remember this from other videos. I've taken a stirrer you can find in most coffee shops. I've cut this one, that's why it looks this way. Usually they're very long. And I want to raise this. So let me go half a turn, 1 turn. Half a turn, 1 turn. Feeling it. I want to do a half more. And do about half more on this one. I'm feeling it, feeling the depth with my fingertip. Feels okay. So now you can see there is some clearance here. If you're getting buzzes on the 2nd fret here, and you're not getting it, let's say elsewhere. Now remember, I'm doing this one-handed, so no real buzz there, right? But down here, 2nd fret, especially there, you'll really notice it here in the C sharp, the B string, 2nd fret. That 9 times out of 10 is because your truss rod is too tight, it's too far back. And I loosen the truss rod about a quarter turn maybe. Very small buzz here, but not like it was. I'm going to adjust this a little bit more. Now this could also be, you know, that the frets aren't quite high, level. So I'm going to level the frets as well. Take these strings off. These are 10s on here. I prefer 9s. And I'll set the guitar up with 9s. I'll intonate it with 9s on. And I'll adjust the truss rod again with 9s on. And in between those, that string change, I'm going to polish and level the frets. I'm going to put red knobs and red pickup rings on here, and we'll see how that looks. And I'm going to see if I can take this off. We'll just try a couple things here today. Whenever I remove strings off of these style bridges and stop bars, I like to secure them so they don't come off when you loosen the strings. Okay, next it's going to be to take these strings off. Very well. Strings are loose. What I'd like to do is go up here around the 12th fret with my diagonals and clip the string. Next, I like to pull all the strings through and keeping them in a bunch and have them in a bunch and then roll them. So when complete, it will look like this. I'll do that with the other end also. Now, important, keep these strings away from your eyes. Better yet, wear eye protection when you're changing strings. While I have the strings off, I'm just going to snug these up. And again, keyword is snug. They're pretty good, actually. They're pretty good the way they are. I'm not tightening these a lot. You don't want to over tighten. Generally, you don't want to over tighten things anyway. Certainly not on a guitar. Sometimes you find some guitars, not this one yet, at least haven't discovered it yet. Let me try that last one first. Sometimes you find guitars that they just hand tighten these. I guess they're in a rush that day. That's not the case here. This is very good. By the way, I want to mention that the hardware on this guitar is metric. Alright, now let's get the pickup rings off. I generally don't like to take them out on the first pass. I like to loosen them up. Almost out, maybe. Because I don't want to be... Why do I do that? Well, because the screws can come out, and I don't want to be chasing screws around. This saves me time, actually, doing it this way. As you can see, screws are all loosened. Okay, remove the screws here from the pickup, neck pickup, and wires tight. Don't yank. Do not yank. There we go. While I have the pickup ring off, I'm just going to wipe off this area around the ring. As some of you know, this white kind of powdery substance is the polish that's used in a factory. I want to do one pickup ring change at a time. Loosen these, remove these actually, while the pickup is still in the body. And I'm doing this because there's springs under here and I don't want them popping out or flying all over the place. they're contained here. And here's a better shot. See that spring? And it fell in. See? So I want to use this. I want to use the screw and the spring again. Here's where the spring fell over, and let's look at the other side too. Oh, out of focus here. Sorry about that. There it is. All right, so if I'm careful with this, I should be able to just prop this up. Magnetized screwdriver, very helpful. Now let's get the other one out. Beautiful. Put the screw through here and put the spring on underneath. Sometimes you can put both screws in and have them, it's rare though, have them catch the hole for the screw. Very rare, and that may take you a couple of passes because the pickup will have a tendency to just drop down out of reach. So what I'm going to do here is do one side at a time. And I want to put a rag down right here so I don't scratch the guitar. Now I put this one's down. Now when you find the hole for the screw, just do a couple of turns, just maybe 2 threads, because you'll need some slack room to get over here. Let's put this screw in here. And let's put the spring on. Now you'll have to hold the screw and the spring at the same time. And I'm going to fasten this down here. And here we go. We've got some success here. Now as I go clockwise, the pickup height relative to the ring will raise. And it has. When putting most screws in, guitar or otherwise, go in reverse, and oftentimes there you go. You probably saw that, but oftentimes you'll feel, see, maybe even hear the thread kind of click. And that's when you know it's lined up. And don't tighten these down, just leave them loose. If you find the screws are a little tight going in, you could just put a little beeswax on the screw. Don't use oil. Beeswax is the best, so I don't want to go through a whole list of products not to use. Alright, the screws have been removed from the rear pickup ring, and let's, again, do not yank. It's a little tight, and that's just the way to do it, just like that. I did not pull this wire. And you don't want to pull it either. Allow me to take a moment here to let you know that these pickup rings are curved upward. So this one is on correctly. This one is not. This one is pointing downward. So I have to take this apart, turn the pickup ring around. Just a note, if you do this job yourself, just be mindful of which way the pickup rings are going to go. A little thing that is helpful, I have this block of wood, by the way, to polish the frets, but it's also useful for this. Okay, here they are, finished. The angle correct. Pickup height needs to be adjusted after the strings get on. One thing I did notice, and you may notice on some of your guitars too, I did take the pickguard off this guitar. There's the screw hole, and there's another one on this side. Is this little indentation right here? See that? That is from the screw in the pickguard. So your guitars may have something like that too. That did not come from the finishing work on this guitar. So that means if I ever put the pickguard back on, I'm going to put maybe a piece of tape or something over that the end of the screw that's in the pickguard. Alright, so to prepare the fretboard for polishing the frets, I have laid out about, I don't know, 20 or so pieces of about 4 inches of tape. Makes the job a little bit easier. I don't have to be yanking the tape off the roll in the middle of doing stuff. Just grab one of them. I also made this template out of a piece of cardboard. I'm going to keep this for future jobs, and that'll help protect the surface of the guitar as I'm rubbing back and forth. Now each space in between the frets gets 2 pieces of tape. I've started with this one so I can secure the cardboard at the same time as putting down 2 pieces of tape. Now I'll do the rest of them. Now when you get up to about the 4th fret, 1, 2, 3, 4, about the 5th fret, space right here, it's 1 tape width. Then they start to get a little bit smaller, so you have to trim them off. Taping is complete. As you may have seen on some of my other videos, I have a block with a groove in it. I made that groove by pressing this down on top of a fret that had a piece of sandpaper face up. So that way I know that the depth of the groove is the same as the fret. Of course, I did tape off the fingerboard, which I always do before I put anything on there. So now this is 320 grit paper. I'm going to cut a piece out and tape it over here. And here's what it looks like. I folded it over on each side and taped it down. I didn't have to use too much. As a matter of fact, I prefer to keep some of the sides not covered with the sandpaper. And this is pretty simple. Seat the block of wood in the groove and just rub back and forth. Now, rather than belabor the point, because you've probably seen this on my other videos or video, eventually the tape is going to start to wear a little bit here. That's when you stop this tape. That's when you know that you've hit, you know, the maximum you want to go, and then you move on to the next one. Just continue the process all the way down the fretboard, and check your sandpaper periodically. It does have a tendency to wear out. I check it about every 5 frets. You might even want to change it about every 5 frets. It's up to you. But the point is, you want to do what you can on your end to keep these to more assure that these frets are going to be at the same height. Alright, just want to show you the speed that I'm doing this at. Light to moderate pressure, and I usually hold the guitar down because it's shaking right now, but one-handed with the camera can only do so much. And this is why I have the cardboard down here. Worry-free rubbing. You could see what would happen if I slipped with sandpaper and it hit the finish of the guitar. I did slip. Here's a close-up of the lighter marks. These are scrape marks from the sandpaper. And that's how I know that it's had enough. Now, I do tend to count how many rubs I do, and this particular time was about 20 rubs. Now, just to finish it off, I'm taking a piece of 2000 grit sandpaper on a sponge, very, very, very lightly, because I don't want to wind up flattening the tops of these frets. Okay, before moving on, just want to wipe off the excess nickel. We get some of this dark metallic gray, dark gray matter. That's the nickel of the fret. And some guitar players, when you change strings or you use a nickel string that's been not played for a while, your fingertips can and likely will turn black. That will go away. You're just wearing off the some of the nickel, the oxidation, and it's going onto your fingers. That's it. Now to do the nut slots. It's a quick and easy way to do the height of your or the depth of your slots. I have 14 layers of tape here because I've counted them, and I'm not saying yours will be 14 because it's going to be different. I use the height of the first fret as a guide, and as soon as I feel that paper rise above, not even with, but above the height of that first fret, then I'm finished. I'm finished with the layers. In this case it was 14. So now I take this off and I move the entire hunk of tape up here against the nut. Now this is going to determine my slot depth. Now what you want to do is protect your headstock. I use a piece of cardboard. Now again, using 320 grit paper, I have creased this pretty hard, very hard crease. And now I don't have far to go. You see how this paper is, see how the sandpaper is almost laying on top of the blue tape, painter's tape, but not quite enough. So now this is a very deep crease, as I just mentioned. And I want to go back and forth in kind of a angle like this. And when the paper gets kind of worn on that edge, just fold it over in another spot and continue. And do this for each of the slots. Okay, my paper is kind of long, so I ripped it in half here so it's a little bit more manageable. You want to tape up this too. I'm going to do that in just a moment. I don't want to take a chance I'm going to come back and hit the fretboard. Anyway, I'm going to stop here. I only took, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 slides with this, not many. And I just wanted to show you this is what it looks like when it starts to hit the tape. So this height is okay. Very well, the A string is complete. This depth or height, however you want to say it, looks good now. And there's the D string. The D string had a lot more to remove. You can see the large white area was from the D string. Now I move on. Of course, you can see how I'm increasing the paper along the way, just so I get fresh sandpaper per slot. Here's what it looks like before I wipe off the excess for all the strings. So you can see you just do it where the sandpaper just touches the tape. And if you want to double check them, just put your tape down, and is it level with, just put your sandpaper down, and is it level with the tape? And the answer is, I've already checked these, the answer is yes. It is. And this is how I've checked it. Not even any pressure, this is just to check it. That's it. Let's wipe this off. Alright, let's remove the tape. And I need two hands for this because some of these are pretty attached to the back of the neck. All the tape is removed, and for those of you who have used painter's tape before, you'll know it leaves a bit of a residue. I think most tapes do, and I'm going to take that off with some polish in a moment. But first, in anticipation of wanting access to the truss rod while everything is off, I'm going to remove the cover, and because I have all this cleared up, I'm going to add a little polish here. Take a look here. I'm going to add some lemon oil here to the fretboard. So this is the before picture. And here's the after picture. Now, I will share this with you. There is so little on here. It's, I mean, it's probably half a drop on a cloth, and just spread it around. It looks like a lot. It is not. What will happen is this shine will fade, and likely because the oil gets absorbed into the wood. For one of the final steps, almost final, I'm going to put on new strings. I'm also going to change out these knobs here too. Now what I like to do is line the holes up before I get started. Line up these peg holes. Yeah, get the right tune here. That'd be better. Alright, so we put these at a slight angle like this. Not like this. Like this. So I can get the string in there pretty easy. It just goes faster. Okay, here's what they look like. Keep your eye on the hole here. And of course on the other side as well. Oftentimes what I'll do is I'll put a cloth down here so that this ball end of the string, or the end of the string for that matter, is not bouncing all over the finish of the guitar. And let's see how you feed this through here. Get that hole lined up like that. Just makes it so much easier. Once the string is fed through here, what I like to do is just pull the string back to about just at the top of the first fret or so. That gives me enough string here to wrap around the post without overdoing it or underdoing it. Yeah, this is your basic way of wrapping a string around a post. I just stuck it through the hole and turned the key. And doing it where you pull the string down here, could have pulled it down a little bit more, but to about here gives you about 1.5 wraps. Maybe here might give you 2. Into the A string. Now, because the strings get progressively more thin, you can pull it down a little more each time. So this time I'm pulling it down to here. Now, once it gets fed through, prior to clipping this piece off, I like to yank on this a bit, or pull it gently, to take up any slack in here. So, here you go. It's about 2 wraps there. Okay, for the D string, I'm pulling it down to about the middle of the 2nd fret area. And here's your finished result. Now, I like to put more wraps on the thinner strings because they take more of a beating in bending, especially the G string. Now, because the strings tension is holding these down, I can go ahead and remove this tape. Now, in the time it took me to put the strings on, you can see that the lemon oil is disappearing, or being absorbed, or drying. I think it's being absorbed into the fretboard wood. And pretty soon it'll look like that. Now what I want to do is tune the guitar to pitch and check on this action. Okay, and checking this out, I'm getting a buzz right in here. Truss rod is too far back. I'm going to loosen it. Very well. The buzz is now gone. It was particularly bad. Happened to be on the 2nd fret of the D string. As I may have mentioned, oftentimes it's the C sharp and the B string, but every guitar is different. Okay, now the action feels very good to me. Last thing I'm going to do is check the height here, and what I'm going to do is bring the height down until the strings are buzzing, and then bring it up just a little bit. Okay, I wish I could share with you how much fun and easy this guitar is to play. It seems every time I don't know, what do you want to call it? Polish the frets, file the frets down, level them off, whatever you say. Because sometimes, frankly, they may be level, but me just doing the block with the sandpaper just takes the edge off, and it just feels like there's no frets on this guitar, which I love. I think it takes a little bit of the edge off the sides of the frets. But anyway, guitar plays beautifully. I like to have my action. This is a Fender extra heavy pick. Extra heavy, not heavy. You gotta look around for those. And I like to have my pick just right there. That's the height. Just buzzes on top of that pick. And that's the height I typically will go for. But the neck feels good, no buzzes. The height of the bridge I just did, and what I may have mentioned elsewhere as well, is the slightest movement of these. In this particular case, these are screws here. They're not thumb wheels on this particular bridge. The slightest movement will make a big difference in the action on the guitar. As well, the nut slot depth will make a difference too. I have some very high-end guitars, and the nut slots are not cut properly, and thinking erroneously that the people at the factory, it's factory specs, right? Big phrase. Doesn't mean it's made for you. I don't want to say it's incorrect, because some people might like it that way, but I find that the what can I say, better that this is adjusted, the slot depths, certainly the better in tune the guitar is, especially in this first position here, because the higher these strings are off the fretboard, the sharper the pitch will be when you press down on the string to fret it. So that's not an issue for my guitars once I get that nut taken care of, and I address these frets. But I try to do this in a manner on these videos, so you could consider doing this yourself. Just have patience, work slowly, take your time. If you get tired, stop, walk away, come back to it a couple of days later, even if you want. But when you're in the mood, do it. Don't do it when you're trying to rush. That's almost like the worst thing you can do. So right now, I'll just finish this up and change these knobs. Well, I realized I have a few things to do before wrapping this up. Certainly polishing is the last step, and I will be doing that. I want to get this truss rod cover back on. And what I'll do is I'll need to, because of the way these screws are positioned here, it's right behind the strings, so I'm going to need two hands. It would be more convenient for me to use two hands, loosen the strings, separate them, put the truss rod cover back on. Okay, when you're putting your truss rod cover on, do not tighten these really tight. Do not. Beeswax would be good if you had some, because some screws are a little more difficult to get in than other ones are. Just move these screws so they just touch the top of the truss rod cover. The bottom of the screws touch the top. You don't want to screw these down tight. This cover happens to be on the thick side. Some of them, many of them, if not most of them, are thin, and when you tighten these, they will split. So just enough to hold it. That's it. All right, now let's get these knobs off. Sometimes these come off. not these. Sometimes they come off pretty easy. Not these. So what I'm going to do is I'm taking my extra heavy pick, and I'm going to use it as a pry, and I'm going to turn this as I'm exerting upward pressure on the pick, and they should pop out. I bought this guitar to kind of experiment with it. So the first thing I'm experimenting with is some cosmetic things. But I plan on swapping out some of the electronics here anyway. So I will get to that eventually. Alright, I want to see if I can get this so-called poker chip off. This is pretty tight on here. I can't do it by hand. Did it by hand and with a cloth. It didn't work. So now I go to this. This is not the optimal tool to use. I'm trying to get the ring in the center here, and I have it on the wide setting. Okay, double over the rag, and watch your tool here. It's got two sides. Put the smooth side down here by the guitar. Again, double this over. Don't really press down into the guitar. You don't want to indent it. And I've done that, and here we go. Okay, without going any further, because this is all done already. You see the ring is off. Switch is loose. The ring is off. This is not turning. So this is glued. Apparently it's glued down to the body. So there's no removing this today, or maybe ever. And here is the guitar with the red knobs put on. Let's check the intonation. First, getting a handle on what does that mean. Intonation is basically, is it in tune? Is it in tune with itself? Well, that sounds like an odd thing, but let's just stick with a guitar. Of course, it has 6 strings. Each string has a halfway point between the nut and the saddle on the bridge where the string is resting. Now, the halfway point on guitars is the 12th fret. So what we want to do is play the 12th fret. Now, I fretted that by tapping on it. Let's hear the open string. That's pretty good. That's an octave. But you can also do it by putting a finger on the edge, or just tap, or just putting a finger across the top of the string and stroke the string, and you'll get something called a harmonic, and that needs to match the respective 12th fret. And if that pitch matches, as they do on this guitar right out of the box, by the way, they did a good job. You don't have to adjust anything here at the bridge. But let's say that this is flat. So this is in pitch, and this is flat, which this isn't, but let's just pretend it's flat. That means that the string is too long. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to shorten the string. And that's why these saddles on this particular type of bridge is adjustable. And you would move this saddle right here this way when you turn the screw clockwise. The opposite is true too if the string is sharp, string is too short, you need to lengthen it, so you will go counterclockwise and you'll see this saddle move backward. And you keep checking, trial and error, against the harmonic pitch, and make sure that they match. And make sure that you tune your guitar after you move the saddle, because the string may and likely will be out of tune. So you want to, again, hit the string, hit the harmonic, hit the fret, make the adjustment, and then tune the string back up to pitch. And you do that for each of the strings. You check the pitch at the 12th fret, compare it, oops. Now this is right out of the box, this guitar, so wow, perfect. Very good. So right out of the box, this guitar is intonated very, very well. So again, although I didn't show you the exact, I didn't make an adjustment here today because I don't have to, I've explained it to you so you can do this on your own. Last step is polishing the guitar, getting the gunk off the back of the neck, and I'm going to call that a day. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope this helps you out.